It's Monday, September 8th, 2025. It's Overreaction Monday in the NFL. But other than that, no, I mean, we have a ton to talk about right now because we've been off all summer. We took a summer vacation. But be that as it may, that means it's also time for the Knee Jerks, the Detroit the Knee Jerks podcast with Eno, Nick, and Big Al. Like I said, we're very rusty because I haven't done this in like 3 months. So pardon me if I'm stumbling over the intro. Regardless of all that, I'm Al Beaton, longtime Detroit-based podcaster and blogger. Joining me, as always, are my co-conspirators. First off, our West Coast correspondent, Nick Milanovich. Nick, looking good. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. Going to dust off the cobwebs on tonight.
To say the least.
Too.
Yes, lots to talk about. And, of course, my longtime partner in crime. It feels like I've known him forever, but it's been a good 15 years. 16? How long have you been doing this, Greg? Greg Eno of the Out of Bounds. Greg, I'll let you do the push your Substack and Greg's House things and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, let me butcher my own intro. How about that?
Yes.
I'm Greg Eno from my Out of Bounds Substack. GregEno.substack.com is how you can get there. Please subscribe. I will be in your inbox every Monday if you do, sometimes with an occasional bonus Thursday piece as well. Today's column was about the Lions and about how their Super Bowl or bust mantra may end up biting them in the you-know-what. You can also follow me on Twitter, or if you want to call it X, at Greg Eno. So, we haven't, Al's actually a little bit incorrect. We haven't done this in 4 months.
It's been 4. Oh,
jeez. As a matter of fact, our last guest was on May 5th. It was Keith Gave, the great Keith Gave, former Red Wings beat writer. We were talking Red Wings post-mortem with Keith, and that was the last show we did. We were, like Al said, we all had busy summers, vacationing and so forth, and so we're back now. And Al, did you want me to do the birthday game before I get into Cal?
No, let's go. Since it seems like we're pretty much a Red Wings podcast now, considering our last guest. Let's do the birthday game after we get to our special guest.
Sure. You know, it's become almost, it's almost becoming an annual rite of September now to have Ken Kal with us before he heads to training camp. It's kind of I like it. We're kind of creating a little annual thing. You're kind of course, radio voice of the Red Wings since 1947, I think. I might be a few years off on that, but Ken's with us. He's always with us this time of the year to preview the Red Wings, and we're so glad he is. And Ken, thanks for being here, my friend. We appreciate it.
Well, great to be here. You guys do a great job, and boy, I didn't realize you were off for 4 months. I mean, I thought I had a long vacation. That's pretty long.
We're a bunch of Johnny Carsons over here, J.P. McCarthy's. There
you go.
Basically, Ken's here. We're going to talk Red Wings, of course, but before we get into that, Ken, why don't you kind of, as I always do, the first question is always, what did you do this summer? So get us caught up on your summer. I know you're on the boat, I'm sure, but what else besides the boat did you do this summer?
Well, it's a sad day. I took the final ride on the boat into Lake St. Clair. It's just a beautiful day out there today. And then tomorrow morning, I'm getting up at 6:30 and I'm putting it away. And it's hockey season when the play-by-play goes into winter storage. So the grind is going to start. Actually, it starts tonight with your podcast here, and then goes all the way. I don't want to call it a grind. I love you guys, but it's work now, and then that's going to take place all the way through. Hopefully, a long playoff run if the Red Wings make the playoffs. But other than that, went to Ocean City with my wife, visited family out in Maryland, and went up to Mackinac this summer. Had a great time over on the island, and other than that, just resting, relaxing, trying to get my notes ready for the season coming up. And boy, this is my 30th season. It's hard to believe.
Wow,
Paul Woods is, I think this is his 40th season or somewhere around there, and we've been together for 30 seasons now. So it's a big year for the Red Wings because it's our 100th year centennial, our 100th anniversary. So a lot of things are going to be planned at Little Caesars Arena with the Red Wings this year.
It seems like they just did 75. Really?
I think my first, no, it wasn't. No, 75 would have been, I can't remember now.
25 years.
Yeah.
I've been here
2000.
Crazy. Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you say that because you mentioned, okay, today, tomorrow starts the grind and so forth. Do you, this might be kind of a silly question, but I don't know that I've ever asked it before. before, so I'll ask it now. When you get ready for a season in your role for what you do, what is involved in that? I mean, what does Ken Kal do to get ready to call a season, or do you not really over prepare? Kind of walk us through the last 2 or 3 weeks before training camp starts for you.
Well, I guess every announcer is different. Actually, I start warming up by doing play-by-play in the shower. My wife wouldn't like it, but no, you got to get the pipes going, and that's why we're doing 4 preseason games on the radio, but I travel to all of them on the road. We're doing all 4 home games this year, so it's good. It's a good way to prepare, and I just put some notes together. It all starts in the summer with the draft, and then after the draft, we have a development camp. We did a live stream, so we get to know some of the younger players that the Red Wings, drafted, and some of the younger players that are in the system. And there was supposed to be a 4-on-4 game after the 4 days of skating, and I guess there were a lot of banged up players, so they ended up not having a 4-on-4 game, kind of a last-minute decision. So, but after that, then you enjoy the summer, and right now it's just getting the notes ready for the regular season, and hopefully it'll be a good one for Detroit.
You've had a lot of summers in those 30 years that were short, for a good reason, because the Red Wings were making deep playoff runs and sometimes winning the whole thing, which of course takes them into June, which severely would cut into your summer. Unfortunately, Ken, lately the summers have been rather long in the sense that when the regular season is over with, you're over with. And are you ready to go back to having a short summer next year?
It's funny you mentioned. I was just thinking about that today, and I remember my boating season would start almost at the end of June, when the Red Wings were winning Stanley Cups. And then the next thing you know, 2 months go by and you're putting the boat away, and then all of a sudden you're back into another season. That's why you look at the Florida Panthers. They played a lot of hockey over the last 3 seasons.
Yep.
They went to the Stanley Cup final, I think, 3 years in a row. They've won back-to-back Stanley Cups. That is an awful lot of hockey. And I remember when the Red Wings won in 97, 98, and then I think they were knocked out in the 3rd round in 99. And I can remember saying, wow, it's almost, you want them to go all the way, but I'm saying, it really is a long, long season when you're playing that much hockey. So I know what the Florida Panthers are going through right now, and they're a terrific team. And again, it's too bad they're in our division because, they're a solid club, and I think they're going to be solid again this year.
We're talking with Ken Kal here on the Knee Jerks. I'm Greg Eno from my gregeno.substack.com blog, and of course Nick Milanovich is here in Big Al. We'll get to those guys in a second. I got one more question for Ken before we get into what Nick and Al want to talk about, and that is when you look at the roster from you mentioned the draft in the summer and so forth. And of course, we had free agency too. When you look at the roster now, Ken, versus what it looked like at the end of the past season, is there anything there that you are a little bit excited about, or maybe on the opposite, are concerned about? What do you see when you look at the roster heading into training camp?
Well, I think we all want a big splash in free agency, and that just didn't happen this year. And it's not that Steve Yzerman didn't want to make a big splash. I'm sure he targeted a couple of players out there. Mm-hmm. The problem is all these other teams that want to make a deal want all of our young guys. They want Sandin Pellikka. They want Nate Danielson. They want Marco Kasper. Sure. And Steve doesn't really talk a lot, but these are the things that I'm hearing, and he doesn't want to give up on those young players for a player that might help you out for a couple of years. So I look at what we've done in the offseason, and again, we've added some depth. And again, it's not a big splash, but I think, some of the guys that we picked up are veteran players that will play a role on this Red Wing team and overall help out, and especially help out the young guys. I look at James Van Riemsdyk. Here's a player that we tried to get him a couple of years ago, and it just didn't work at the trade deadline. But I look at his numbers, and he's going to help out on the power play. He can score goals still. He had a really good season last year. He can put up some good numbers. So I kind of like him. On the blue line, you've got Travis Hamonic, another guy that the Red Wings wanted several years ago. He wanted to play in Canada. He was with the Ottawa Senators. But again, another veteran defenseman that knows how to play the game and adds depth to the blue line core. And again, a veteran that will help youngsters like Mo Sider and Simon Edmondson develop. Bernard Docker's another guy that will add some depth back there on the blue line. And Appleton's a guy that we picked up who's a solid fourth line player, very good penalty killer. And again, I always felt that last year we needed some help in the penalty kill department. They finished dead last, and we need somebody that's going to go out there and be a good checker on the fourth line and also work well on the penalty kill. And I think he's going to do that. But I guess the biggest upgrade is in goal. John Gibson was a guy. I've always liked John Gibson, even when he was with the Anaheim Ducks. I thought he was always a solid goaltender. He's been hurt, and he's been in and out of the lineup over the last couple of years. Hasn't really played with a winning team, but he does show in his career that he can win hockey games. I think one season he had 30 wins. 4 years ago he had 20-plus wins. So I'm hoping that he stays healthy, and him and Talbot will be a good 1-2 punch in goal. But when I look at the team, I just look at it as they didn't make a big splash. They added some depth, and they're going to be just like the last couple of seasons here in Detroit. They're going to be one of 5 or 6 teams trying to get a wild card spot.
In the bubble,
because I don't see the top teams in our division in either side in the Eastern Conference going anywhere. Those teams are still solid.
Right, exactly. We're talking with Ken Kal here on the Knee Jerks. Let's bring Nick Milanovich in. Nick, what you got for Ken?
This might be old news at this point, but when you met with us last year, the Red Wings had a different head coach. And so I'm just kind of curious how you characterize Todd McClellan after seeing for maybe a little over half a season. So
I think that's an upgrade, and that's one thing that's that's really going to help this team. For Todd being here for an entire season, having his own training camp. It was so difficult for him to come in, for any coach to come in around Christmas time, not knowing any of the players, not really following the team, and trying to get this team to win some hockey games, because obviously prior to that, they just weren't going anywhere. They weren't winning any hockey games. But I think that's an X factor right there. Todd's a good coach. He coached the San Jose Sharks. They've won 50 games a number of times when he was out there. We saw last year what he can do. Immediately paid dividends for Detroit. They had 2 7-game win streaks, which really kind of kept them into the playoff hunt there until March again, where they had another swoon like they did the last couple of years. But other than that, I think he's really going to be the X factor on this team. You need a solid coach, a guy that's going to implement his system, and unfortunately with Newsy Lalone, he was a great guy, but the players didn't play for him. So they'll play for Todd, and I think he'll get them to play the way he wants them to play, and that's winning hockey.
Right on. Right. You mentioned the March swoon. I think this is maybe the third year that it seems like right after the All-Star break. It just seems like they really hit the skids. And struggled right after the All-Star break. Do you notice anything different about the team, say just before that sort of swoon and during it, I guess?
Yeah, 2 years ago, Dylan Larkin got hurt. Right. And that's when they just couldn't win hockey games. And what's amazing is I look at the Maple Leafs, and sometimes Matthews goes down, but then all of a sudden all their other guys step up and they pick up right where they left off, but it didn't happen with Detroit. When Larkin went down, it's like the whole team went down, and that was 2 years ago. Last year, no excuse. They had some winnable games in there that they just didn't win, and they weren't getting any points. And I think if they would have had a 500 March instead of a sub 500 month, they would have been right there again, like they were 2 years ago when they tied Washington, lost on a tiebreaker. Can't explain it. I don't know why it happened over the last 3 seasons, but obviously it has to stop. And, I just hope that once we get to March, we're going to be in the playoff hunt, and that won't happen again.
Before we get to Al, one thing I want to point out about that, what Nick just asked you, was that McClellan basically said what a lot of us have said, which was when they were going through that swoon, and you remember him saying this, I'm sure, Ken. He said basically the same thing we've all been saying, which is it's essentially calling the team soft. We said whenever things start to don't go our way, the something happens to us that we just don't respond real well when things don't go our way, and then it just kind of piles up. And he said it, and it's something that I've never heard really any other Red Wing coach say when they were going through it. But he was right, and I don't know, Ken, if that's I know we all put a lot, for some reason in hockey more than any other sport. We put a lot of pressure. We asked the captain of the team in hockey to do a lot of heavy lifting. I mean, they really do. I mean, the fans do, the media does, the players themselves do, and the captains do. And so it's easy to look at Dylan Larkin and point the finger at him and say, you are the one that, it starts with you. All this, this softness and whatever else that McClellan was inferring. But that's not really fair, is it? I mean, that's a collective effort. I mean, the captain certainly is a big part of that, but you can't blame all that on Dylan, can you?
No, and, I look at it this way. Dylan's in a different situation than, say, Steve Yzerman was, or Nick Lidstrom, or Henrik Zetterberg when they were captain of this Red Wing team. Yeah. They had solid veteran leadership around them that they could lean on. Like if something was going wrong with Steve, obviously you've got Sergei there, you've got Shanahan there, you've got Larry Murphy when he was there, Nicholas Lidstrom. You had guys that were veteran players who were leaders as well that you can rely on and you can lean on. This is a different situation because of all the younger players. It's Dylan Larkin, and he doesn't have those kinds of veteran players that he can really lean on and help out. That's just my opinion. Yeah. That's what I think. So that's why I think when you see guys like James Van Riemsdyk coming in, hopefully, he can be a leader. He's a veteran player. Travis Hamonic, some of the other players that, the Red Wings have, Kane and Kopp and Comfer, and all these guys, need to gel and be together and be as one. And I didn't see that happening. And it's tough when you're the guy and you're the captain and you really can't lean on some other guys. It really gets even tougher. So I can see where, maybe that started to eat up Dylan Larkin a little bit. But, I just think that now as some of these younger players are taking a leadership role on the team too, some of the younger guys like Raymond and Sider, that's going to help out too. So, I just see that will change, I believe, this year with the new head coach. But again, you're right. You can't be soft. When things go bad, you got to find a way to dig in and just play better hockey.
A good example of that, David Perron. A lot of folks, and I kind of poo-pooed it. A lot of folks said, they're going to miss Perron. And I said, really? And the folks who said that said, yeah, because not so much what he brings on the ice in terms of goals and assists and so forth, but that intangible factor. And I think they kind of proved to be true. I mean, they did miss a guy like Perron, who adds that kind of intangible thing that you're talking about. But it's a very fair point to point that out. You're right. Stevie was with a whole bunch of veterans. Even when the team was not that good, there were a lot of veteran guys around him like Brad Park and so forth. And then, of course, he became one of those guys himself.
Right.
But you're right. There was a maturation factor in there, and I think that's a very fair point. Let's go to Big Al. What you got for Ken Kal?
Well, while we're talking about some of the new acquisitions and some veteran leadership, there's going to be a lot of, let's just say, the goalies are very veteran, especially with the acquisition of John Gibson during the offseason. Apparently he'll be, do you think he'll be 1A to Talbot's 1B, or do you think one of them they're hoping to actually grasp the job and become the main goalie, or is that era past in the NHL?
Well, I think to make the playoffs, one of your goalies is going to have to win 26, 27 games. And last year, Talbot won, I believe he won 24 games, had some overtime losses. But, the backup goaltenders last year got 14 or 15. Kosa had one. He came in, his only game that he played. But, I think Gibson will be an upgrade in goal. But, again, what worries me is the injury factor. And both goaltenders have gotten hurt over the last several years, and you just need to have them healthy. Now, what happens if one goaltender goes down? You've got Sebastian Kosa, who's in Grand Rapids, but apparently he's not ready yet for a role on this team. So you hope that they're healthy. Again, I like Gibson, and I think how it'll work is I think both are going to get an equal opportunity from the start. And maybe after the first 7 or 8 or 9 games, you'll take a look at one of the goaltenders, whoever's playing better, and that goaltender will become your number one. But I think in the start, you're going to see a lot of rotation, and that's just how the coaches have done it over the last several years here in Detroit.
Well, to Al's point, I'm looking at the roster right now. The combined age of John Gibson and Cam Talbot is 70 between the two of them. Talbot is 38, Gibson's 32, and there's really not a lot of depth, at least in terms of guys who could step up and play in the NHL. If, to your point, Ken, if one of those guys got hurt, and you make a good point also about the winning. One guy's got to win 27 or 26. You and I and Al and so forth. Because Nick's a baby still. We grew up watching hockey when guys like Tony Esposito and Eddie Jockman would play 65, 70 games a year, and that was not a big deal. You would hardly ever saw the backup play. And then they would also play all 60 minutes of those games, too, by the way. Very rarely would they ever get pulled. And it was the exception to that rule, of course, was the Bruins when they would go with literally a half-and-half combination of Eddie Johnson and Jerry Cheevers, which is very unusual at the time. But there is something to be said for today's goalies. I don't think are built to play more than 50 games a year, because that's almost pushing it a little bit. It's kind of like how starting pitchers don't go very deep into games anymore in baseball. It's almost like some of these goalies don't have that kind of durability to play 50, 60 games a year. What say you about that?
Well, that's a good point. There were times last year when Talbot would have, let's say, 2 straight games in a row, and it was a back-to-back and maybe 3 and 4. And I'm thinking, like, man, he's playing good. Why would he want to play? Like when a goalie's winning and he's playing well, he wants to be between the pipes. But it's just a different era, I guess, with traveling and everything else. And there are very few goaltenders, as you mentioned, Greg, that play 60 games now in the National Hockey League. And it just seems that for whatever reason, whether it's travel or wear and tear, or they want their goaltenders to be sharp, and you got to keep players in the lineup to stay sharp, that maybe with goaltenders, they rotate them a little bit more than usual. But again, you have to win. And that's the thing. And winning is what it's all about. And if you want to make the playoffs, obviously you got to get 92 points, 93 points at the lowest. Some years are 95, 96.
Right.
So you need a goaltender that's going to win you 27 to 30 games, and then your backup's going to have to win 14, and then you got to get some overtime losses in the process too. So one of these two goaltenders is going to have to step up and be the guy, and you hope that when they're both starting the season together, one of them's going to, take the net and go with it and run with it, and then the team will play better in front of them, and they can win some games.
Yeah, no more making the playoffs with 66, 68 points like back in the day, like back in the mid-'80s when you could come in fourth in your division with 66 points and make the playoffs. I remember those days. You're right. Everything's 90 plus for sure.
Greg, just one other thing, too, is the Red Wings are still waiting for their number one goaltender. I mean, it's been years since they've had a guy like a Dominic Hasek or an Osgood or Vernon or somebody like that, where they've drafted goaltenders, and I mentioned Sebastian Cossa. I thought by now he would be a backup goaltender on this team, but that just hasn't worked out. This is a big year for Sebastian. He's got to go into Grand Rapids and really play well so that next year he can be your backup and eventually be your goaltender. I really like Trey Augustine, too. He decided to go to Michigan State. Obviously, he's a couple years away from even playing with the Red Wings. After he plays at Michigan State, he's probably going to play a year or two in Grand Rapids. So we're still waiting for that Vasilevsky, or we're still waiting for that Swayman. We would like to have a goaltender that you can count on to play a majority of the games like those goaltenders, but it's just not there right now. So it's kind of a patchwork type system the way they're working with it right now.
We should, at this point, maybe this is a good time this is not really Red Wings related, but this would probably be a good time to mention Kenny Dryden, who passed away the other day at age, I think, 78. And you remember of Kenny, of course. He was such a, at the time, of course, you see a lot of big goaltenders now. Sebastian Cossa is 6'6", for example. A lot of goaltenders, you don't play goalie now in the NHL. Like you're not Jimmy Rutherford anymore when you're 5'8", 5'9". You're 6'2", 6'3". Dryden was at least, I want to say 6'4", 6'5" at least. in that net. I don't know exactly how big he was, but for the time he played, he was a monster in terms of size. But he was more than just a big goaltender. He was a very good goaltender. And your thoughts on Kenny Dryden?
Well, he had a pretty good team in front of him, too, and a pretty good blue line core, right? With all those guys back in the late 70s that played, Larry Robinson and Serge Savard and all those guys. Scotty had a pretty good team with the Montreal Canadiens. But with that said, he was an outstanding goaltender, a cerebral goaltender. He very smart. I think he was a lawyer. Got a degree in law, written books, and was just lights out. So, I talk to Paul Woods about this all the time, too, about those great Montreal teams in the late 70s where I think they won 4 or 5 straight Stanley Cups.
Right.
And he says, well, if you got by Lafleur, then you had to figure out how to get by Robinson and Savard. And then once you got away from them, if you're lucky enough to get a shot, you have to face Ken Dryden. And he goes like, he says, it's almost impossible. That's how good they were. And those teams back then when Scotty coached them, I think they lost 8, maybe 9 games all season long.
Right.
They had a bunch of ties, but they never lost. So, that's how good they were. And Dryden had a great team in front of him. But with that said, he was an outstanding goaltender as well. You still got to stop the puck, and he did.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go back to Nick Milanovich. What you got for Kenny Kal?
This is back to the Red Wings now. And I guess it was just announced maybe a few weeks ago that they're finally going to retire Sergei's number. And I think in January, I think that's right. They're scheduled for January.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that?
January 12th, Yeah, January 12th, that's going to be the day Red Wings are playing the Carolina Hurricanes. Long overdue, in my opinion. Sergei was a dynamic player. I got to see him, I think, for 5 years, call his games. And he was one of those dynamic players. And I tell people there's very few players in the NHL. And at the Joe, where we broadcast the game, we were in the back row of the upper bowl. He would take the puck and move down the wing, let's say, on the left side. And people would actually stand up to watch what he was going to do. Like, he brought fans out of their seats. The way he was a powerful skater, he was creative, and he could finish as well. He had a lot of flair, and he really fit Detroit in a way that we never really seen players in the past do. Like, Gordie Howe was a great player, but he wasn't flamboyant or anything like that. I mean, Sergei comes in, he's a great player. How they got him in from Russia was like a spy novel, and not only that, but he had the good looks going, and he was just a terrific dynamic player, and with that flair, as I mentioned before, and like fans in Detroit just gravitated to him. And geez, when you think about it, look, our number 1 and number 2 center were Yzerman and Fedorov could be a number 1 center, but on this team he was a number 2 center. But he was just a great player and well-deserved to have his number in the rafters. He did a lot of great things for the Red Wings. He entertained a lot of people, and he had a really solid career here in Detroit. So I'm happy for him. It'll be good to see him in town, and well-deserved to have that 91 hanging in the rafters.
Right on. The other part that sometimes gets forgotten when you're talking about his scoring is he was a hell of a defensive player. I think he actually played defense a few times. I mean, as a defenseman, he had that much versatility.
Yeah, Scotty put him back there in the playoffs. I think he played a couple of playoff games when we had some injuries back there, and he didn't miss a beat. And the other thing I laugh at is the white skates. And he brings in these white skates, and I remember talking with Paul Boyer about him. He actually had to rebuild the entire skate because companies didn't make white skates. They had to get the leather made, and Paul talks about how much of a pain in the butt it was to stitch everything together and make it look like and I think they were Nike skates. I think he was one of the first guys to have Nike skates, but it was a lot of work put into those skates. But yeah, he won the Hart Trophy, he won the Selke Trophy. He was very good offensively and defensively. And you know what? That was the way the Russians played. If you look at every Russian player, Pavel Datsyuk that the Red Wings had, Igor Larionov.
You had to play both ways,
You had to play both ways. And you know what? That's the right way to play. If you're a young player in playing in the National Hockey League, like a lot of these guys are gifted offensively, they don't have a clue when they come in how to play defensive hockey. And so they should be watching films of how Sergei played and how Pavel Datsyuk played and Henrik Zetterberg and all these guys, because that's how you win and that's how you become an all-around good player.
Any insight, Ken, as to why you think this decision to retire Sergei's number kind of came out of the blue? I didn't hear any whispers about it. Of course, it's been a bone of contention among a lot of folks, myself included, for a number of years. And all of a sudden, this thing gets announced. And I mean, I'm glad. I was glad, of course. But did that catch you off guard as well? It just seemed to come out of nowhere.
Well, I don't know the circumstances of why it wasn't retired earlier. All I know is, and all I can tell you is that I'm glad it's going to be retired finally. I think we waited long enough. I think it was the right decision to make. And it comes at a time when you're celebrating 100 years of Red Wing hockey that a player as great as Sergei Fedorov is going to have his number retired. I mean, we could still be waiting if this wasn't announced. And, again, we'd all be saying, like, how come his number is not retired, So I'm happy. It's January the 12th, I believe. We're playing Carolina. That's the game. And again, it'll be nice to have Sergei in the building and see that number go up to the rafters with all the other greats.
Absolutely. Let's go to Big Al next. What you got for Ken Kal?
Speaking of Detroit Red Wings legends, the franchise lost one of their greatest legends this past offseason with the passing of Alex Delvecchio. I just want to know if you had any thoughts on Alex and maybe some of your interactions with him over the years.
Alex, great man. If you ever talk to him off the ice, he was just a solid individual, salt of the earth kind of guy. No ego at all. He was just a pleasure to be around. And, unfortunately, he, unlike Ted Lindsay or Gordie Howe, he never really came around too much. So I really didn't have a lot of interaction with him. But I do remember when they announced that they were going to move to Little Caesars Arena and they were going to have a groundbreaking, I did get a chance to interview him. And I asked him, I said, what was it like when you won your first Stanley Cup? I think he was 19 years old or something when he became a Red Wing. And I think that year they won the Cup. And he goes, let me tell you something. He goes, I played hockey for 19 years and I didn't win a damn thing. He goes, every level that I played at, we were like a last place team. We never had a chance to win. He says, then I come in to the Red Wings and we win a Stanley Cup when I'm 19 years old. And he goes, it felt like I was in heaven, So, he was a great player too. I had a chance to watch him play probably from 68, 69, all the way through till he retired, I think in 73 or something like that. And I wish I could have saw him play in his prime because he was just a great center iceman, old school, right down the middle. He could pass, he could shoot, smart player. And, think about it. I mean, he played 24 seasons, I think, in the National Hockey League, all with one team, the Detroit Red Wings. I mean, that's something not many players are able to do that. Howe did it with the Red Wings. But, yeah, he was a great guy, great person, and, a broadcaster, too. He did some I think when the games were on pass or something like that, he was a color analyst. So, he dabbled in with some television. He was a general manager for a little bit and a coach, or he was a coach. I don't know if he was a general manager, but he did a lot of things just like Sid Abel did.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he I when he passed, I remember reading a bunch of quotes, and some of them were taken from years ago. And Phil Esposito, no less, was quoted as saying that Alex was one of the most underrated players that ever played in the NHL. That because Gordie Howe got all the accolades for good reason, but he said Espo said that there was not a better passer in the NHL than Alex Delvecchio, and so that's saying something because Espo played with some great players as well. Before we wrap up here, Ken, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say real quick, isn't it amazing though when you have a championship team, you have two great centers, 1 and 2, and Howe was a winger. But he was a great player. He could play center ice too. But you had Howe and Delvecchio over the years, when they were good. Norm Ullman was just as good when he was playing with the Red Wings with Delvecchio. Yep. Then you got Yzerman and Fedorov, and then you had Zetterberg, Datsyuk, and so I think one of the keys is you got to have those top two centers. And if they're great top two centers, you're gonna have a good team.
Yeah, for sure. Can you give us any? You hinted at it at the top of the discussion about this being the 100-year anniversary. Can you hint at anything that that's going on this year we should be aware of that how they're going to celebrate down at the LCA this year?
Well, I believe they're going to celebrate in eras, and it's going to start. They're going to have whatever it is. The first 5 or 6 or 7 games will be one era, then the next era, then the next era, all the way down. And I think they're going to start with the 20s when they first came in, move to the 30s, 40s, 50s, like that. November 9th, 10th, and 11th, I think they're having a big to-do over at the Motor City Casino Hotel, where they're going to bring in some players that have played with the Red Wings in the past. They're going to call it a fan fest, and it'll be a time for the fans to spend some time with some of the players, and they'll have all kinds of opportunities for people to talk to the players and talk about the 100th year anniversary. We mentioned in January, Sergei Fedorov's number is going to be retired. And, down the road, I think they're going to do something with us, the announcers, and which will be nice. I think that's in March, and I'm hoping Bruce Martin comes back for that. By the way, I did talk to Bruce a couple of weeks ago. He's doing fine. He's celebrating his 75th wedding anniversary.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
He's 95 years old. I think his wife's 94, 95 too. So he's still going strong, and that's good. And I hope he'll be able to attend, when we do something for the announcers as well. But
is he still up in Gaylord/Grayling in that area?
No, he sold his place up there. He went to Florida, then he sold that, and now he's because he's in his mid-90s now. He's in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, close to his son who lives out there as well.
Okay, great. That's what I was just gonna. I'm glad you gave us a little update. I was going to ask you if you had heard from Bruce or how he was doing. 94, 95. Goodness gracious, gosh almighty. All righty. Well, Ken, thanks for being here. You can listen to Ken Kal, of course, doing Red Wings games all year long and on the radio, and we're looking forward to that. And we'll have him probably back on next September talking about the 26-27 Red Wings. But for now, we're talking 25-26. Ken, have a great season, my friend. Thanks for doing this, and be well, okay?
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right.
Always fun talking to Ken.
Yes,
That's great.
absolutely. Good stuff there. Good stuff for sure. And, so that was a good one to kind of break the ice after being off for 4 months.
Yeah, good Lord. I used to be able to do the introduction on literal muscle memory.
Yeah, of
and
course.
Since and the thing is now with all our lives being so busy and all the things we have going on right now, our podcasting, put it mildly, has been sporadic at best. So,
Right.
So please bear with us. And as you see, I got my camera working, so yay for that. But regardless of all that, thanks again to Ken Kal. It's always a thrill to talk to him. And it's funny that when we last spoke, it was early summer. We talked Red Wings, and here we are, late summer, still talking Red Wings. But we have a lot more to talk about when it comes to the other teams in town. But before we get to that, guys, I think Greg has a game to play.
Yes, we're going to play a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro? Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I give Al and Nick a clue or 2 or 3 of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. And if either of those gentlemen can correctly guess this person within the first 2 clues, in this case, they'll win a month's supply of either King Dons or Ding Dongs, whatever you choose.
Depends on where you grew up, correct? Yeah.
What's that? What's that?
Yeah, it depends on where you grew up,
right.
what
That's
it was called. Yes.
Right. That's right. King Dons or Ding Dongs. So that'll be the. And then they look
are they wrapped in foil? They better be wrapped in foil.
That's right. and they look like hockey pucks, which is
yes.
Here's the hockey thing.
And probably at this point, they taste like hockey pucks.
Yeah, right. This person did not make his name in hockey. This person made his name in football. He was born on this date in 1945. He is 80 years old today. God bless him. He is a local, very well known in the local circles because he is very heavily affiliated with the Lions. He was inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I'll stop there because that in and of itself might be a giveaway. Born in 1945, Lions Hall of Fame.
Huh. That is, assuming one I should get.
Probably passed a few years ago.
Yeah.
The
1945.
only one that comes to mind is Alex Caris.
Nope. Alex
No.
Mongo, huh?
And he said he's in the Ring of Honor?
Well, he's in the Hall of Fame too.
In the Hall of Fame, yes. I
Hall
would.
of Fame,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, gosh. Lions in the Hall of Fame.
Not too many of them,
No, there's not. That's
especially going in that era.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, God. Why am I drawing a blank on this? Oh, I'm just going to pass rather than this burn clock on this, and we'll wait for the next question.
Okay.
Because, what's another, 45 minutes on a King Don anyway? So,
Right.
it's not going to get any worse. So, all right. So, with that, all right, we got, obviously, the Lions started their season yesterday. Lots to talk about there, mostly bad. We also have the Tigers still have a really good record, but there's a lot of seems that the wheels look like they might be starting to fall off. We know there's a lot going on there as well. And of course, the Pistons have had a pretty interesting offseason with one player in specific that none of us have had a chance to talk about. So I guess we'll start with the Lions because that's the one that seems to have everyone in a tizzy, to put it mildly. Social media has just gotten toxic with the Lions' loss to the Packers yesterday. They fell 27-13 on the road in Green Bay. It was the national game. It was the late afternoon game on CBS. We had Tony Romo and Jim Nantz were there. And the Lions really were never in contention. Even they only lost by 2 scores. That really didn't reflect how much the Packers really dominated that game for the most part. The defense failed to generate pressure, but as Greg mentioned and when we were texting last night, the offense looked specifically lost, and that raised a lot of questions about Ben Johnson's replacement, John Morton, who Greg mentioned you would not want to be in Morton's shoes this week because the pitchforks and torches are already out for him after that awful offensive performance yesterday. So I guess I'll start with you, Greg. That was I won't want to call it disturbing, but it was a concerning performance I think we saw in Green Bay. And I think a lot of it really came down to the interior offensive line is all new, and we have an all-new play caller. And I think people are also now realizing the Packers are really, really good.
All of the above.
Yeah.
I used the word unnerving in my piece today, and I think that and I called it the worst game they played since maybe going back to 2022. I know they had a stinker in Baltimore a couple of years ago, but
Yeah.
that was before the Lions really got really, really good in that game in Baltimore. But this one, was the worst, I think, Dan Campbell coach game I've seen in a long time because there wasn't anything there. There was no intensity. There was no rhythm offensively. There was no pass rush. It was just such a flat performance. And I know that you can't be on your A game every week as much as you'd like to. Mm-hmm. And I know it was the first game and so forth, and the starters hadn't played in the preseason, which we could maybe talk about, by the way, about whether that's a good idea. But starters didn't play in the preseason, so I understand all that. I think the Packers just wanted it more. I think they came out they lost 3 straight games to Detroit in Green Bay, where, of course, as you know, in the past, they just dominated the Lions in Green Bay. Losing 3 straight games to any team in Lambeau had to have grated on them. They lost that tight one in Detroit last year. The Lions have been the team to catch lately in the division, and I think that the Packers just kind of came out like enough is enough. And they really punched the Lions in the mouth. But I think what disturbed me, Al and Nick, wasn't just that they got punched in the mouth, because that happens. There was no response. There was no real response. They were manhandled on both sides of the ball in the trenches. They were the offense was pity. I thought I was looking at Darryl Rogers kind of an offense. It was pity pat, just these check downs, very, very vanilla. It was you used the word disturbing. I think it was disturbing. I mean I know that the Packers are good and they are. There's no question about that. But my goodness, the Lions they were like a deer caught in the headlights the whole game, and almost like they weren't ready to play. And I think that's what kind of really bothered me is Dan Campbell teams traditionally, even if they come out a little slow out of the gate, which they've done, get it together, and you just kept waiting for them to get it together. and they would get a little bit of momentum on a drive, and something would happen. They couldn't punch it in, settle for field goals, go off to an interception in the red zone. Never really got going. The run game didn't get going. Montgomery and Gibbs were held in check. I think somebody said that Gibbs had 10 catches for 30 yards, which is just, I think it was an NFL record.
Yeah, it's double-digit catches and least yards. Yeah,
I mean, that just tells a story right there. I mean, 10 catches for 30 yards is ridiculous. It's easy to pile on Morton right now, John Morton. It's easy to do that. He's a lightning rod right now. I get it. Kelvin Shepherd's defense, I thought, got a little bit better as the game went on, but Morton's offense was really weird. And I don't know if that was because the game dictated that or what the Packers were doing, but there was nothing going on. There was no downfield, nothing. It wasn't looking downfield. I know the offensive line had trouble pass protecting. It was really odd. And I hope that that's an anomaly and that they'll come out and smack the Bears on Sunday, but that was really, really unnerving.
Yeah, and to kind of follow up with a couple of those things, Dan Campbell, I think today mentioned that when they were asked about the complete lack of explosive plays, because that he's basically said if we can't run, we're not going to be able to have those kind of plays, because they only averaged, I think, 2.1 yards per carry yesterday, which is very un-Lions like in the Campbell era,
right?
Especially with the two running backs there. And I believe he's also mentioned taking a little bit off the plates of the young linemen, specific, the two guards essentially.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because they're even Ratledge yesterday, who was awful in pass blocking yesterday, by the way. He mentioned that there was misassignments and miscommunication, and that probably does have a lot coming down to you have essentially three new players in the middle of your line, with Glasgow moving from guard to center, and then the two young, and then you got Mahogany and Ratledge playing guard, who are both super young, but the one thing that got me, Greg, is that Campbell said today that it may take us to game 5 or 6 before we start to gel. Well, looking at their schedule, they can't afford to wait till 5 or 6 for themselves to gel.
Right. Yeah.
I
saw that too. That was, but you're not going to get anything from Dan Campbell other than what Dan Campbell really thinks. He's not going to, say something. You're not going to be able to coach speak. A little coach speak. But
there was a little today, I think.
I mean, that's inevitable. But for the most part, he's going to tell you what the real deal is. And you're right about the schedule. The schedule is they're not going to do them any favors. But the piece I wrote today was basically they went into this. There's 2 years in a row now. They've gone into the offseason with these quote unquote bad tastes in their mouths. Okay. Last year was the whole, we blew the game in San Francisco, and NFC Championship game, 17-point lead at halftime, blew that. So now that last season was all about that, avenging that. So they win 15 games, they win the division, they get the number 1 seed. Everything looks like that's working, that motivation to get that out of their system is working. And then they get blown out of at home to a rookie quarterback in the playoffs, first round. So now the motivation is, we got a bad taste in our mouths, and now it's Super Bowl or bust. And I don't know how many times you can go to the well of using prior disappointments as motivation, because everybody else has got prior disappointments. There's only one team that wins the whole thing every year. There's 31 teams that go to training camp with bad taste in their mouths, frankly. Either you didn't make the playoffs, you got a bad taste in your mouth there. You made the playoffs and got knocked out. You got a bad taste in your mouth there. Lions aren't the only ones that got disappointed in the playoffs, okay? So I appreciate that they wanting to have these big thoughts, Super Bowl or bust, what Amik Robertson said. It's Super Bowl or bust. David Montgomery all but said that a few weeks ago. It was basically all or nothing. Everybody's saying kind of all or nothing, and I don't know if that's really healthy, because if you're going to go all or nothing and you start out poorly, now you're just adding to the pressure on yourself. And I said at the end of the piece, how long before Super Bowl or bust turns into let's just get to 500? Because they could start out 2-4, 1-3 or something, given that schedule. And all of a sudden the Super Bowl or bust thing, I don't think that does anybody any good. I understand you want to say that because you had 2 good regular seasons. They've won 27 games the last 2 regular seasons and nothing to show for it. So I understand why they're kind of rankled by that, but the NFL doesn't work that way. And it doesn't. It's probably the most non-linear sport of all the 4 majors. There's so many variables. Teams don't just automatically move around, like I said, like a checker on a checkerboard. It doesn't move. It doesn't work that way in the NFL. You got to prove yourself every single year, every single week. And I like that they're thinking big, but I just hope that that's not going to become a work against them as opposed to work for them.
Nick, what are your thoughts on all this? I don't want to call it ugliness, but the game, the reaction, it really is. The fan base looks like they've lost their minds over one. Bad loss as it was. My God, the fan base. Now I know you spend a lot of time on Twitter. You have a good feel for what's going on out there, and Lions Twitter really looks like they're about ready to turn on the team.
I think they're overcooking game 1 of a 17-game season. They lost game 1. Who cares? Move on. There's 16 more to play. Yep. I kind of agree with Dan Campbell, though. It's gonna take maybe the first 6 games before you know what you really have out of this team. If you think about it, what's different than last year? Number one, you have offensive and defensive coordinators are completely different than they've had in the previous 4 seasons. So there's an adjustment period, and they haven't played in an actual game. This offense has not played in an actual game under this coordinator before. I don't know how the coordinator is going to react in games. I don't know how the team is going to react to his new scheme. A new offensive line, really. There's a lot of scrambling around in the offensive line. Defense, I'm not sure that the Lions' defense has never been amazing, even in a couple of years ago. They've been good at times, and a couple times everybody's wanted to hang Aaron Glenn. So I'm not sure what I have in defense. Individual players, great, but as a defense, have they ever really been a shutdown defense? Not really. So they've all relied on their offense, and I don't know how good Johnny Morton is going to be as an offensive coordinator. I have no idea. When they said how impressed they were, he has great credentials when they first hired him. I'm like, I didn't see it. Whatever he had done in the past is I couldn't really tell that was any good. I mean, to me, it wasn't anything spectacular.
Right.
But who the hell knows? I don't think at all. Also, the first team on offense played in the preseason, even, or they played very little, so that affects them too. Being in a game is really different than preseason. Is different than spring practices or whatever, summer camp, and so it's gonna. I think you won't know anything until October. Start preparing the rope then, I guess, but. They're going to have a tough time. I think they're going to have a tougher time with the Bears than people think. They had a tough time last year with the Bears, even though I think one of the games they lost just because of a boneheaded decision by the coach.
Yeah, the Bears still have that timeout, don't they?
Yeah, so it wasn't that the Lions
still has that timeout, yeah.
So, and so I think it'll take a few games, and they have a hellish schedule. So who the heck, they could be 1-5 in the first few games for all you know. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
This is just one stupid game in the beginning. A lot of I think a lot of really good teams that even have gone to win the Super Bowl might lose a game in the first couple of weeks.
Of course.
Who cares?
Yeah. Of course.
They get up into mid-season form, and then they're a lot harder to play then.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried. But,
it's way too early to get as worked up as some people. I guess I would say the loudest people in this fan base are actually ridiculously over the top in their proclamation that the team sucks, the season's over, or something to that effect, and that's. I mean, I hate telling people how to be a fan. I don't like to do it. I don't want to do it. But, I mean, get a grip. It's It's funny because sometimes you see baseball fans take the football mentality of, oh my God, they had a bad couple weeks, the roof's falling in, and then baseball has its ebbs and flows, and things start to turn around. And obviously, the roof wasn't falling in, but it's odd though with the NFL. Yes, I know it's a much shorter season. Every game means more, but they need to have at least a little bit more of a baseball mentality at the early part of the year. That, as Nick says, it's only one game, one of 17. Every team has stinkers.
Yeah.
I mean, remember didn't they open it with Tampa Bay last year and they could not score a touchdown to save them live? Yeah, their lives. Yeah. They had like over 500 yards of offense, and they were like 1 of 7 in the red zone. And then people were losing their minds because they thought Ben Johnson sucked because he couldn't get him into the end zone. So, and we're hearing a lot of the same a lot of the same things. Well, the Lions didn't play their players in the preseason, so they had to get the rust off. There's we're hearing a lot of the same things just for different reasons compared to last year, when they also started the same way, and then they righted the ship fairly quickly. But I will also say, though, it's going to be very entertaining, Ben Johnson returning to Detroit, much like Matthew Stafford returned to Detroit. And he'll probably get a similar reception.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, why does Ben Johnson have an annoying wife?
Yeah, he's going to bring his kids, and we can throw food at them like they supposedly did to Stafford's kids. But yeah, it's but on the flip though, Ben Johnson has really been playing up the. I won't say that the Lions hate, but he's been playing up. He made some cracks about Jared Goff, and he's really been playing up to the Chicago fan base at the expense of what he had done in Detroit. And I think that has kind of set some fans, rubbed some fans the wrong way.
Well, I was just on Lions Reddit. I was literally a few seconds ago. I was on Lions Reddit, and there's a little thread there about all it is. It's just a picture of Ben. It looks like a screenshot of Ben. Yeah. Might have even been from tonight, pregame. A screenshot of Ben Johnson, and just everybody just like F you, and he's not very well. Like everybody accusing him of having 1 foot out the door, and he did a horrible job calling that Commanders playoff game, and because he didn't care, blah blah blah, and all that other stuff. Which I think is just a byproduct of how the NFL does their interview thing, where you can actually interview during the playoffs. The whole interview thing is weird in the NFL in terms of coaches. So I don't believe that for a second necessarily. But he's not. For a non-player, usually you wouldn't care if a non-player shows up, back up. Who cares, right? But Ben Johnson, is different for sure. This is a different situation. I'm with you, Al. I think this will be interesting. But but it's like anything else, though. Once the game starts, all that stuff is like pregame stuff. Once the game begins, it's the Lions against the Bears. Right. It's not Ben Johnson against. I mean, they're going to try to portray it as Ben Johnson versus Dan Campbell. It's ultimately the Lions versus the Bears. But it will be interesting. What I'm interested in seeing, not just next week, but in general from the Bears, is if we see the same creativity with the Bears offense as he exhibited with the Lions. I know the Bears fans were just beside themselves with glee when they hired Johnson, because that's the guy they wanted. And I've been kind of going in and out of Bears Reddit throughout the summer, and they're just so excited about Jen. And I get it. I understand that. I agree that that's big for them. I'll be interested to see how he calls games with the talent that he has, which is, of course, nowhere near what he had in Detroit, with a second-year quarterback and so forth. It'll be interesting to see what Ben does with that off. I wish he wasn't doing it in the division, but I am interested to see what he'll do with the Bears.
Yeah, that's a good point. Will he be able to pull off the same sort of things that he could with Jared Goff with Caleb Williams? And Caleb Williams does have a lot of upside, but he does not have the experience or the savvy or the accuracy or probably the leadership skills at this point that Jared Goff does. And I know they've really pushed the offense was not just Ben Johnson; it was collaborative effort between Johnson and Goff and some Dan Campbell sprinkled in. So I guess maybe, Nick, we're going to get to see some pure, unadulterated Ben Johnson, and maybe we'll get to see just how good he really is, because how many times have we seen it, Nick, where the hot coordinator, the coordinator du jour is the team that swoops them up they're going to be the next big thing, and that coordinator is a victim of the Peter principle. He has reached the level of his incompetence. Ben Johnson was great in Detroit. But there is no guarantee he's going to be a good head coach.
Oh, none at all. None at all. I mean, that's true for any coach, honestly.
Right.
Some of them actually may end up being better head coaches than they were assistants, for all you know. I don't know.
Yeah.
But but any coach's success is a combination of who he has on the staff, the players he has, his circumstances. I mean, how many years have we been debating whether Bill Belichick's a good coach since Tom Brady left?
You saw that game Saturday night, or the other night, where was it? TCU absolutely destroyed North Carolina. Just on a tangent. I don't know if you saw any of that game, but I mean the network went into that game this is Bill Belichick's night. North Carolina literally went all in with the celebration. Essentially, it felt like they were celebrating a victory before it even happened. And TCU, after the fact, said, we felt disrespected because no one was even talking about us. And they literally, beat them, was it 48-7 or something like that. So,
yeah, I mean, we've gone through stuff like that with Lions coaches too.
Yes.
Do you remember when, the hell's his full name? Mariucci.
Yep.
Remember when they booted Mornwig and then got Mariucci?
Yeah.
And it was all over the papers. Got Mooch? We do. He sucked because he was on the Lions. There was nothing. Matt Millen was now the general manager, and he had the Lions roster, not the 49ers roster.
Right.
Yes.
And that was a cluster like no other. And in fact, it got worse after him too. But that happens all the time. It literally happens all the time. And then remember, Ben Johnson is now the head coach, so he's not the offensive coordinator of the Bears. So he's got somebody else. I don't know if he's doing the play calling, but he's got an offensive coordinator, right?
Yeah, but speaking of that, what was interesting is that there was that report that who Johnson wanted to be his offensive coordinator.
Morton.
John Morton. Yeah. So who the hell knows?
Let's wait a few games so the sky's not falling after just one game. And Greg, I think you're right about this Super Bowl or bust thing. That's fine if that's what their goal is, to get to the Super Bowl. But nobody owes it to the Lions. It's not a given that it's going to happen. They have to play 17 fucking games and plus win in the playoffs. Every single week. When the Pistons did it, they had such laser focus, like you had in your article. Every game they were just methodically grinding away every single game. They didn't look to, we should be in the finals. Let's prepare for the finals. They were fighting every single game. And if the Lions can refocus and it's okay, next week we got the Bears. The week after that we got whoever they got, and just not worry about the damn playoffs or even the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So. And it would not surprise me if Dan Campbell comes into this game with a bit of I want to show my protege who's still the boss, or you know what I mean. That you think that he has to know some of the stuff Johnson has said, and some of it's probably just an act or he's pandering to the fan base. I mean, Dan Campbell did a lot of the same stuff when he first got here, but you would have to think that Campbell still wants that feeling of the NFC North still runs through Detroit, and they need a good game against Chicago to kind of change that, bring that narrative back. Because if you looked at the narrative today, it's Green Bay, Green Bay, Green Bay, Green Bay, Green Bay. And I know, Greg, you brought this up when we were texting last night about the Micah Parsons stuff. He was in a pretty good game. He had some pressures. He had one sack. It was in garbage time. But going by Nance and Romo, you would have thought Micah Parsons is not going to lead this team to one Super Bowl, but to multiple Super Bowls. and defensive ends don't do that, as good as he is. It was ridiculous.
Well, yeah, that was actually going to kind of be my jerk of the week. So
no, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'll save my comments for that. But yeah, that was a little bit over the top for sure.
Yeah, but Greg made a comment involving gargling. I'll just put it that way. Oh, okay. With that, let's a couple of topics to talk about with the Lions. There was an uproar before the season started about the lack of depth at the edge. Why don't they call it defensive end? That's what it always was, and all of a sudden in the last 5 years it's now edge.
Right.
But regardless of all that, Motor City Dan Campbell was asked in his weekly interview when 97 won the ticket of his thoughts on bringing back Zadarius Smith, because there was a lot of talk that maybe Smith just wanted to, being he's 32 years old and a veteran, he just did not want to participate in training camp. I mean, hell, we used to see that with Barry Sanders all the damn time. And when asked about thinking about bringing him back, Dan Campbell said, "We're good." And the internet lost their minds. And making it even worse is that Smith then proceeded to sign with Philadelphia. But then again, they gave him like a $9 million contract. I'm not sure how many incentives involved, but that's a lot more than the Lions were willing to pay, considering, well, we'll talk about where the Lions are contract-wise after this. But this isn't playing too well either with how the defense looked yesterday. But the thing is, I know we talked about this, Nick, a defensive end isn't a 32-year-old defensive end who can't play well against the runner, is essentially a situational player at this point of his career. That isn't going to make a bit of difference in where this team ends up. I just find it all overblown. I don't know about you.
I could never understand what the fascination was with Zadarius Smith. Yeah. It's not Bruce Smith we're talking about. That's a little different story. That guy was an animal. It's not Reggie White. Mm-hmm. He was a good player earlier in his career, but he fell off, and Cleveland was willing to trade him, so that's got to tell you something. But no, I mean, last year he was brought in. What did he do? He was a stopgap for them, and I'm sure if he played much better than he did, it would have made a difference. But he wasn't a game changer when played. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm sure he liked playing in Detroit early on. I think either before his first game or around that time, he wore some Rasheed Wallace basketball jersey, and everybody got excited over that. So he warmed himself up to the fans, and that's probably what it is. But he wasn't going to. Are they losing a lot by not signing him? I don't think so. I don't think they did. So the fascination escapes me.
Yeah, and the same thing, Greg, with the Davenport, where everybody's absolutely convinced that he's going to go on the IR after 2 games or something like that. Who knows? But the fact that the fan base has convinced themselves that this is how it's going to play out. They desperately needed Zadarius Smith because Davenport is no way he's going to stay healthy. It was, or for that matter, Hutchinson needs a running mate, blah, blah, blah. The thing is, though, it's pretty obvious at this point, Greg, that the Lions want opposite Aiden Hutchinson, a different type of player than Smith is. They want a Davenport type who's going to set the edge, be able to play more against the run, can add some pressure, but that isn't his main job, because that's going to be Hutchinson's job, is to essentially go for the quarterback. And it's pretty obvious that if they have Hutchinson, they really don't feel like they need Smith, because they want another type of end across from him.
Well, first of all, I agree with both of you about Zadarius Smith's age and his. I thought he did okay last year.
Yeah, he was
the
fine.
Mid-season,
Yeah.
he was okay. He vanished in the Commanders game, but then so did a lot of other people. I got a question for you guys. I'm really, or not really so much a question as a statement. I'm really looking forward to Aiden Hutchinson playing his first game of the season next week because I don't think he played yesterday, did he? Was Aiden on the field?
I would just say this: that was his first game action in 11 months.
Yeah, well,
He was. And expecting him to come out like he played last year is asking an awful lot.
But he was a complete non-factor. I mean, I don't even know if he made any tackles. I mean, he was. I know you're saying about Rusty and first game in 11 months and so forth, but my God, that was really. But again, these kinds of things, when the whole team plays bad, you tend to notice everybody playing bad. Yeah. And Hutchinson was, maybe if the Lions had played better, I wouldn't have noticed it as much. But Hutchinson, I wasn't expecting him to come out and be a Pro Bowl guy right off the bat either. But he was, my God.
Because you could talk about what the hell was Brant's thinking about whipping that guy's helmet across the goddamn field, for example.
Yeah, the whole thing was just off. Just a little.
Yeah, it's just like it just a domino in that first half specifically. It just got worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, but it's funny. Brad Holmes' Dave Dombrowski's thing was always the bullpen. Look at the bullpen. The thing that's kind of dogged Brad Holmes is, despite all the great things he's done, drafting and making kind of, sly signings and really navigating the salary cap and all that stuff. The thing that still follows him, whether it's fair or not, is the pass rush. It's just that everybody, I guess, has something that's going to follow them, and for some reason, the fan base just will not let go of that. And I understand it's a big part of the game now. You mentioned, why do they call it edge? Yeah, it's permanent. It's in college. They call it that in college now. It's a whole new position now. But that's still the thing that people are not going to give him any rest about is the pass rush. And so if you don't get 4 or 5 sacks a game, fans are going to lose their minds. Now, Jordan Love in the opening drive, as you saw yesterday, was way too comfortable. But you know what, though? We've all seen opening drives go that way. And opening drives, sometimes by the time midway through the fourth quarter, you don't even remember the opening drive because so many adjustments have been made. That didn't really bother me that much. It was a little concerning, right down the field, converting third downs like they were nothing. But then, as the game wore on, I thought they got better. Kelvin Shepard's defense got a little bit better, started to get off the field a little bit more on third down, started to stop the run a little bit, started to get a little bit tighter in the secondary. But still, there was not a lot of pressure on Love. And that, in the NFL nowadays, let guys sit in the pocket, and conversely, when you see a guy like Goff, who's, about as mobile as I am, get flushed out, it's his effectiveness goes down. So it's a big part of the game. There's no question about it, the pass rush. But you can't. It's like a bullpen. Fans want a bullpen that's good. Every arm that comes out of that bullpen, it's got to be a shutdown arm to please the fans. And every game has got to be no blown saves. Every guy that comes in is going to do a hold. No blips, no blemishes at all. Same thing with the pass rush. The fans want 5 or 6 sacks a game. They want 10 pressures a game. And if that's not happening, the pass rush sucks. The GM sucks. Fire everybody. It's exhausting.
Yeah, you're exhausting, I think, is a good way to put it right now. And I think it's because we've been dealing with kind of the same stuff with the Tigers over the past couple of months, again, with a fan base in doomerism mode, I guess is the best way to put it. But we'll get to that in a little bit. One more thing about the Lions, guys. There was a big surprise late, I think it was late Friday. Was it late Saturday night? Yeah. Where it was the Lions announced that Jameson Williams got paid. He and the Lions agreed to a 3-year, $83 million contract extension. $67 million of that is guaranteed. Williams has 2 years remaining on his 5-year rookie contract, which means with this extension he is locked in with the Lions through 2029. That means the Lions have now extended, along with Jameson Williams, they've extended Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker, Kirby Joseph, David Montgomery, and Alim McNeil who I think there is one of the big missing pieces of the defensive line right now, because he is your pass rusher from the middle, but won't be back till probably halfway through the year because of his ACL injury. Regardless of that, the Lions have locked down a lot of their homegrown stars, and the only ones still left, more or less, are obviously we've talked about Hutchinson, who that came out, I believe, yesterday that there will be no extension talks during the season. Obviously because they just saw the contract that Parsons got, $50 million a year. And if Hutch has a huge year, well, he's asking for similar money. Also, there's still Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs. Those are essentially the three left. I don't know about you, Nick, but I kind of thought that maybe Jameson Williams would be one of the odd men left out. And I think because he's being paid good money, but not crazy money, the Lions kind of leapt at the opportunity to lock the kid down. And I do think they are expecting bigger things to come from him as well.
I mean, I think so too. He's a good player. He's fast as hell, and he can catch. So I think they're going to keep a good young player in his prime. So I think it was a good move for them to lock him down and keep him there. I was wondering whether they would do it or not do it.
Yeah.
Whether they considered him expendable or try to trade him, or I don't know what, but and now it's clear that they do want to keep him. So he's here for another 5 years, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah,
So,
I have no complaints with that at all. I mean, they have it looks like a great wide receiver room right now, really do.
Right. Brad Holmes has a problem I've never seen with the Lions, and that's having that many good players to hold on to.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how this plays out. And I think he's curious because salary cap. You can get into a lot of pitfalls with the salary cap too.
Yeah, exactly.
You give too much money to the wrong player at the wrong time, and it just ends up being an albatross. And but I don't think that's happened with the guys Holmes re-signed. They're still trying to play. They're still trying to grind it out.
Yeah.
So it's a nice thing to see. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Greg, we did see an example of who's chosen and who's not when Alex Anzalone was making noises about wanting a contract, and essentially all the Lions did was essentially renegotiate his deal to give him more upfront money, I believe, more of a signing bonus. He did not give him an extension, and this is really feeling like this will be his last year as a Detroit Lion. And with the three guys I mentioned, obviously Hutch, he's not going anywhere, especially if he's as good as we all think he's going to be. But tight end and running back with Laporta and Gibbs, if there are two positions that seem to be a little more expendable or easier to replace, or in the fact of running back have a limited shelf life, those two might be the two positions where maybe the Lions won't be able to afford, or maybe declare we want to put our energy somewhere else and finding replacements in the draft or whatever. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen because they're both great players. They're both Pro Bowl quality or better players, but I don't know if you're going to be able to keep everybody. And so the decision's got to be made. As we've seen, they've probably made the decision with Alex Anzalone.
Well, you can't keep everybody. But although, having said that, Brad Holmes has done a remarkable job of keeping what he's kept so far.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable how they've been able to, and he's probably got some right-hand man who's probably doesn't get any credit. He's probably
I think that might be Dinsmore.
Yeah. Or Disner?
Disner, that's it. Yeah. Disner.
There's usually some unheralded person who handles all the salary cap issues in any sport that has a cap, who probably should get most of the credit, but doesn't.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, but you mentioned it a little while ago, when you draft so well, and you hit on so many picks like Holmes has, you create depth. Obviously, you create natural depth within your own team, and all these guys you're talking about, I think, Al. That he's locked up. I think he drafted. I think every one of them that you're talking about, he drafted.
Other than Montgomery.
Other than Montgomery, right.
Other than Montgomery.
So that's and even Montgomery was a replacement of Jamal Williams.
Remember, he was brought in by Holmes. Yeah,
right. There was like, my gosh, Jamal Williams, you can't let him go. He was such a nice, friendly guy. He was an exuberant, bubbly guy. He kept scoring touchdowns left and right. A guy that you could really, really root for. He seemed like a really good kid. And then they made a business decision, and everybody's, oh my gosh, Jamal Williams, and they bring in Montgomery, which was an incredible upgrade. But I think it's fascinating, Alan. When we look back to, and I hate to keep going back to when you and I were following football, but it's true.
Nick's probably rolling his eyes. Look at the old guys talking about leather helmet days.
The Tony Dorsetts of the world, and the Barry Sanders of the world, the Walter Paytons of the world, and Emmitt Smith and Thurman Thomas, and all these great running backs who played, Jim Brown, who played 8, 9, 10 years at a high level. Yeah. And now your statement a few minutes ago is right. Now anymore, you have these running backs have like a 3 to 5 year window where they're really, really good. And then beyond that, it just either they're out of the league or they take a secondary role. They have like 5 years get like 250 carries a year, and that's it. And even 250 is pushing it, and that is it. And then they just kind of fade away. And so it's amazing how those guys that I just mentioned could tote the ball 250, 300 times a season for 9 or 10 years in a row. Franco Harris, 9 or 10 years in a row. Yeah. And not see really any degradation, any fall off until maybe the very, very end. Dorsett with the Broncos, Emmett with the Cardinals. Other than that, even Peyton, right to the very end, Barry, right, Jim Brown, right to the very end, were high productive quality running backs, and that's just something you don't see anymore.
Yeah, no, that is funny that you mentioned it. Yeah, because those, for the most part, you saw running backs get that back then get the second contract and stayed productive, and that was in an era where they weren't as protected as much either, for that matter. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's I can't explain it for the most part. You're right. It's odd because now you see guys that, what the term is, that never give a running back a second contract. That's essentially that's all like common wisdom in the NFL. For every Derrick Henry, there's there's a dozen, like Reggie Bush or something like that. Guys who just flamed out after this. Look, Jamal Williams. Look what happened to him. Right. He had that a couple of solid seasons with Green Bay. Had that great season in Detroit, and then he has done nothing ever since. Right. So, it's odd that when you bring it up, just how. I don't know how the game has changed, how training has changed, or how usage has changed. Because, these running backs are getting used like crazy for the most part in college. They're still getting those 200, 300, those 300 carry seasons back then. But you're right. It's very odd. And if there is going to ultimately be an odd man out, might be Gibbs, but he could be a generational guy. Who knows at this right now? I'm not going by yesterday. I'll just say that. Right. But what we've seen of 2 years of Gibbs, should be the best running back the Lions have had since Barry Sanders. But we'll see when it comes to contract time because sooner or later you're going to run out of cap space and they'll have to figure something out.
Right.
All right. Speaking of doomerism, after all the Lions stuff, let's move on to a more doomerism, and that's the Detroit Tigers, which is odd. We're bringing this up because there's less than a month to play in regular season. We're today's the 8th. Season ends at the end of the month. Regular season ends at the end of the month. Tigers are all but a lock for the postseason. They are 82-62. They're 8.5 games up in the Royals for the division. They're only a half game back of the Jays for the best record in the American League. Right now, if the playoffs started today, they would have a bye, and they would miss out in the first round, and they would play in the divisional round. And right now, I think they would end up playing a team out of the West, I think. But whatever. But the Tigers also have been playing a few games under 500 for like almost over 2 months now since before the All-Star break. And so they built this massive advantage over their first hot starts of the season and have kind of cruised since with we had that horrible that 1-12 stretch right around the All-Star break, and that's where the doomerism really started. But then the Tigers bounced back. I think they ended up winning like 10, and they won like 10 out of 15 or something like that.
Right.
They kind of righted the ship, made up most of that ground they had lost. Because if I remember right, didn't Cleveland get to within like 5 games at that point? Yeah, everyone was getting concerned.
Sure.
And then they got the lead back up to double digits. So right now it's at 8.5. But there's little issues. There's some splitting on the seams when it comes specifically to the pitching staff.
Right. Yeah.
You have injuries for one. Other than Skubal, who's likely going to be a 2-time Cy Young winner by the end of the season, you have a rotation has Casey Mize, Charlie Morton, and Jack Flaherty, who are all at this point maddeningly inconsistent. You don't know what you're going to get out of them from game to game. Alex Cobb was signed to be an innings eater and 5th starter. He was hurt to start the season, never pitched, and will now have hip surgery, which will likely end his career, so he'll never ever wear a Tigers uniform. Jackson Jobe injured his arm, had Tommy John surgery. Reese Olson is out with a sore shoulder. If he even comes back, it will be in the postseason, probably later in October. So there's the rotation is. Oh, and then you have also Tyler Holton, who has been moved to the pen, and he would probably be your number 2 starter right now. But he's probably on an inning. They haven't said it, but he's probably on an innings restriction because he's a young kid.
Are you thinking of Troy Melton?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Tolton's the reliever. That's right, Melton. Yeah. And then you got Chris Paddock, who was traded for to replace Olson, and he has been moved to the bullpen due to his ineffectiveness. I mean, he had a couple of decent outings. The Twins destroyed him twice, and he's never bounced back from that. And then the bullpen is a lot of injuries as well. Essentially, Kyle Finnegan, who has been lights out since they picked him up at the trade deadline from Washington, is on the IL with a tweaked groin or some sort of groin injury.
Yep.
And then they have a Toledo. They literally have a Toledo shuttle running, and they're bringing guys up and down and back and forth depending on who they're playing and how the matchups look. I mean, it's literally become, as much as they said they weren't going to have to do it again, pitching chaos has returned. You know, as good as this team has been this year, Greg, and they have fought through some adversity, and they're hovering around 500 for about half the year now. I think things are starting to come to a head of the pitching staff that it's going to be awful hard to overcome in the postseason.
It's so funny about the postseason because if you look at it from a high level, there is definitely a lot to be concerned about. There's no question about it. Right. Beyond Skubal, the rotation is kind of a shit show. I mean, it's Mize,
a bunch of guys with 5 ERAs.
Yeah, Mize after they made the All-Star team, and he's been bad since the All-Star break. You mentioned Paddock, but I told you, Paddock is Paddock. He's exactly he's given you exactly what he's given every big league team he's ever been on, which is a couple of good starts with mixed in with 4 or 5 bad ones. That's the way it is. Yeah. Morton is old, and he's showing it, and he'll do the same thing. He might look good for a few innings. These guys, though, once they get through second or third times through the lineups, that's when they get hurt. Yeah. Charlie just hangs breaking balls like nobody's business. It's unbelievable. I remember Burt Blyleven, who had a great one year. I think Burt gave up 51 home runs. 51 home runs in 1 year. Why? Because he hung his breaking ball a lot. McClain gave up a lot of home runs. Just giving up home runs doesn't mean you're a bad pitcher, of course. Yeah. But the thing with Paddock and with Morton is even the BABIP, the batting average balls in play, they get hard. Even if the balls are outs, they're hit hard. Yeah. Then you got
Flaherty has been so inconsistent. It's been terrible.
He's been very consistent. A big disappointment. I was very happy when the Tigers reacquired him, re-signed him. He's been a huge disappointment. So now once you get past Skubal, that's the high level. But when you break it, when you zoom in on the playoffs, there's a couple things that might work in the Tigers' advantage in that scenario. First of all, in a short series, and I'm going to say short because even a best of 7 is short. Because that's a small sample size versus 162 games. You might be able to get by with. Here's the thing: you might be able to get by with Skubal and maybe one other guy who kind of rises to the occasion. Okay? maybe Casey Mize picks up the pace and pitches better in the playoffs. Maybe you get Jack Flaherty of last year. You only need these guys to get good for about a week or a week or 2 weeks to kind of get you through a series. So that's the good news, is you could still doesn't look good for 162. But if you zoom in and say, okay, we're going to look at like 2 weeks in October. These guys, if they who knows? Morton could go out there and pitch a 4-hitter through 6 innings, 1 run, and that, and everybody's going to say, Uncle Charlie is back. You don't know what's going to happen. Okay, it looks bad now. There's no question, because you don't know what you're going to get night to night with these guys, other than Skubal. You know what you get with Skubal. That's set. And the nice thing now about this year, Al and Nick, is that unlike last year, when the Tigers had to scrape and claw and make the playoffs in the final weekend of the season as a wild card, they're probably going to win the division and be able. AJ Hinch is going to be able to set his rotation for the playoffs, so he doesn't have to have Skubal, who I think didn't even pitch in the wild card round. I don't think he even pitched until I think, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he pitched the wild card, but didn't pitch. I can't remember when Skubal pitched, but it was weird. He didn't start game 1, I don't think. So against Houston. But now he's going to be able to. Hinch is going to be able to. They'll probably clinch the division with 6 or 7 or 8 games left in the season at least. He'll be able to kind of then set his rotation the way he wants it. So once he can set it so that he's got Skubal for game 1, and who knows for the rest of the series, because the first series, as you know, is a best of 5, so it's even shorter. And we don't know what's going to happen with rainouts. You don't know what's going to happen. Inclement weather could push guys, but you don't know. You don't know. That's the thing about the playoffs. But I know it looks rough now. There's no question about it. And even same with the bullpen. Bullpen can look rough, but if they could string it together of like a week and a half of decent pitching, you can make the World Series that way. That's the way it works. When the Tigers played the Cardinals in 2006, I didn't know this. I knew that the Cardinals weren't as good as the Tigers record-wise. The Cardinals won 83 games that year. 83. And they made it all the way through and won the World Series with 83 wins. That just goes to show you. I thought the Cardinals were better than 83 wins when they played the Tigers. No, 83 and 79. 4 games, over 500, made the playoffs, got all the way through the National League and won the World Series in 5 games. So you just never know why. You guys like David Eckstein, you don't know where these heroes are going to come from. I remember Brian Doyle for the 78 Yankees after Willie Randolph got hurt. Brian Doyle was like the second coming of Babe Ruth in the World Series. It's unbelievable. You just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and it's pretty obvious right now that the Tigers are pretty convinced, and deservedly so, that they're pretty much a lock to make the postseason. And I think it's pretty obvious that Hinch is trying to experiment right now as to who he can trust and who he can't trust, and who he's trying to get right. For example, how they've been using Tommy Kahnle. I mean, they went like a month where they didn't trust him in high leverage situations, and they gradually have started to get him back into those. And he actually pitched pretty well until I believe yesterday. So I think a lot of the struggles we're seeing right now, with specifically the bullpen, is AJ Hinch and Chris Fetter experimenting, seeing who we can use here, who we can use there, who can we trust in multiple innings, who can we use in bulk innings, so on and so forth. And the other thing you also keep in mind as you bring up small sample sizes is also short leashes in the postseason. You're not going to have a game where you leave Charlie Morton in to give up 4 home runs. If he starts getting hit hard, he's out of there. You bring it in the bullpen. Yep. So, there's a lot of experimentation, I think, going on right now with the Tigers trying to figure out how they're going to implement their pitching chaos. Nick, where do you fall on all this? I know this would probably lead into your thoughts on Scott Harris bargain bin hunting at the trade deadline, because a lot of the guys we're talking about are not exactly highly sought after as trade bait.
Well, to be honest, I'm kind of looking at baseball this year sort of on the periphery. I'm not following it that closely. But from what I've noticed, I can't keep track of these new guys and this patchwork pitching staff Morton versus Finnegan versus this guy versus which guy we had all year. I just I'm like losing track of all this. If it's chaos is like the perfect name for whatever the heck is going on with that pitching staff. And despite popular belief, it's not going to be let's just get this guy in. Chris Fetter will wave his magic wand and he'll be
right.
Roger Clemens. All
yeah, you can't fix everybody. That's the
right.
thing. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, the guy who did well with Flaherty last year has Flaherty again. It's not the same. Yeah. And because why? Because Flaherty is being Flaherty. He's kind of been like that, I think, for his career. And so I think Greg is right. In the short series, you can make certain adjustments and you can kind of push things that you wouldn't push during the regular season because you got to, ration your guys over 162 games
right.
is really different than the 7-game series.
Sure.
So they may have Skubal go past 100 pitches in the playoffs.
Oh yeah.
If he's pitching lights out, God, I hope so. I don't want to pull him at 100 pitches in the middle of the World Series.
No, once he gets to 90, the clock's ticking with him. At least right now, you're right. Yeah.
For sure. And it kind of makes sense over the wear and tear of a season in some ways. Mm-hmm. It's kind of annoying too, but it's like, why are you pulling this guy out? He's pitching lights out, but you put in a reliever because you want to give up 4 runs right away.
Yeah.
So, I think the playoffs will be a different animal. It always is. So right now, for me, it's like, other than seeing what their magic number is, which I don't know what it is, it's probably like around 11-ish.
I think it's 11 right now, 11 or 12. It's low. It really is.
So, other than knowing that, like, I don't care about September with them. Let's get to the playoffs. And they've been on the skids lately in general, too. Mm-hmm. I think at one point they were like lost 8 of their last 11, and what did they lose 2 of 3 to the White Sox? Is that right? I think
they lost 2 or 3 to the White Sox. Yeah.
So, Sox, but they're not good. So, yeah. Like I said, I'm confused by the pitching staff. It is chaos, other than Skubal. So, did you want me to talk about Scott Harris?
Well, I was going to bring up the quote about where it leads to the claims of prospect hoarding and falling in love to a fault with your own prospects. Is when asked about the moves he made or the lack of I would say needle moving moves that he made, this is the quote that Harris gave. A lot of moves we passed on felt like moves that we were going to haunt us for many years to come. We felt like we have one of the best, if not the best, farm system in all of baseball. We felt like at this moment in time in this organization, giving up young players to chase short-term fixes is not in the best interest of the Tigers. And what's interesting, Greg, how many years have we said the vast majority of trades involving prospects for major league players, the team that gets the major league players wins the trade? And I can see them wanting to hold on to some of these guys, but it seemed like unless there was some sort of Godfather offer out there, they were not even going to even think about touching their top 10 guys for the most part. Unless they did trade a catcher who was ranked, I think, in the top 5 or 10, in the top 10, but that's because it's weird how this organization is loaded with good catchers.
Right.
And they got a young one in Dingler who's not going anywhere. Right. So, but regardless of all that, it really Harris sounded like he's fallen head over heels in love with prospects, and that never ends well.
The thing that really stuck in my craw of that quote that you just read, and this really, really bothered me, was when he said, for short-term fixes.
Yeah.
And I said, you mean like winning the World Series?
Yeah.
Is that a short-term fix? I mean, what is he? Don't forget when he said that, the Tigers were still had one of the best records in baseball. Okay, And that was before the 1-12 thing really kicked in. And this was their chance to really make noise and go for it, if you will. And when he said for short-term fixes, it was almost dismissive.
Yeah.
Like Scott, do you know? Have you looked at the standings? There wasn't that's something that a bubble team GM would say. That's something that a team that was like 4 games out of the wild card might say. Not a team that was at the time sitting pretty at that point in the standings. That really grinded me when he said that, for short-term fixes, and as if it was just like. And I think I wrote a piece that says like he's trying to build a dynasty before he even wins one World Series. And that's the thing. Say what you will about Dave Dombrowski and about him, he maybe hamstringing the Tigers in terms of getting rid of some younger guys to chase the ring. But here's the thing. It's not mutually exclusive that you draft well and develop well. It's not like it's an either or. You make it sound like it's an either or. Or we can either draft real well and develop, or go for it. Can't you do both? Aren't you able to draft and develop and go for it? The whole thing was just. Now it turns out that Finnegan has indeed been. That was a good pickup for sure.
Yeah.
Paddock was not. Morton was whatever. I mean, okay. Yeah. I'm okay with a 40-year-old, 41-year-old dude if he's there to provide some sort of guidance. He's won a lot of games. He's won World Series. He's been through around the block. That's fine.
Yeah, you're hoping for Doyle Alexander or Kenny Rogers,
okay.
but it's not happening the way it looks. Yeah.
Right. In fairness to Harris, at the time the trade was made, Morton was doing well. He had truly, he had an awful start in April and May. But from May to the time the trade was made, he was pitching not bad at all. Okay, so I get it. The Paddock thing was just, three of us could have seen that one coming because Paddock is Paddock. He's not he's not anything other than that. And like I said, Finnegan was a good pickup, and the other one, Montero's been okay. To me, it wasn't about the moves themselves. The moves themselves we can pick apart all day.
Right.
To me, it was more about, and this is why I wrote the article. To me, it was more about his attitude about the whole thing. Like you said, falling in love with prospects, presuming that they're all going to hit. We don't dare trade any of these guys. And I made the reference to Cameron Maybin, who was supposed to be a five-tool guy coming up. They don't dare trade Cameron Maybin. Oh my God, no. Well, what do they do? Dombrowski trades him for Miggy, essentially. Okay, and we saw how that turned out. Okay, the other thing is, remember when you didn't dare trade Jacob Turner? Remember that one? Yeah. Oh, you don't trade Jacob Turner. You can't do that. You can't do it. I mean, these guys. And I don't know how good McGonigal's going to be. I don't know how good. Who's the other kid that's
Max Clark?
Clark. I don't know how good he's going to be. I mean, it might be great. I don't know.
Yeah.
He might be. He could be another Lou Whitaker. It could be another Clint Hurdle. I don't know. I have no idea.
But I could see those two being off the table, but everybody else being available.
That's fine. If you want to hold on to your top two guys, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But he treats everybody like they're I don't know. It's just. And Nick, by the way, makes a very good point. He made a very good point. We were talking about. Nick has always said that it's yet to be determined if Scott Harris has the wherewithal. I had made the comparison to the Tigers from 79 to 83. Yeah. And somebody else said something like, Nick has said, the person said, which is very similar to what Nick has said, is but back then Bill LaJoy brought in Willie Hernandez, Dave Bergman, and Rupert Jones and a bunch of other guys, okay? Bill Madlock in 87.
Darrell Evans.
Evans.
Yeah.
And so it's like, does Scott Harris have the wherewithal, the savvy, and the vision to do something similar? We had Ken Kal on earlier. Ken made a great point about Dylan Larkin not having the same veteran presence in the dressing room as Stevie and all the other captains had. That's a very fair point. Well, you have to have veterans. You have to have guys on the team, and the Tigers are young. Now they have some veterans. Yeah, they have Torres. Okay, they got Morton, the aforementioned Morton. Other than that, they're very, very young. That's okay. It's okay to be young, but we'll see whether or not Harris is able to, add those components. And they don't have to be big splashy deals either. Those little components, those under the radar guys, who, when you look back on it, were very great moves. We don't know yet whether he's got it in him because he hasn't done it yet.
Probably the only player I would say that he's brought in that would fall into some of these categories has been Torres.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But, Maeda was a disaster. Cobb was a disaster.
Oh my God, it was.
But
Alex Cobb.
Yeah, and he paid a lot of money for Cobb. And hell, I could have done as well as Cobb for $7 million. So I don't mind going around with a hip problem. But that's right. You just have no idea. He has not tried. And this thing of like mortgaging the future or whatever hell the statement was by him, it's like, Scott, at what point do you realize, are you going to be okay with the team contending and going for it all? They actually,
right.
They gave Harris the middle finger by making that amazing run late last year to get into the playoffs,
right,
and advance into the playoffs. Scott Harris was a seller last year.
Sure.
This year they've been in first place all fucking season long.
Right.
And it's like, we don't want to get rid of our young guys. God damn it, you're like on a trajectory to possibly do very well in the playoffs.
Right.
Give yourself the best chance of winning. At what point is this ambiguous point in the future going to actually arrive where he's going to do this kind of thing? So the only thing it makes me think is he's too chicken shit or has no wherewithal to pull anything other than one of these bargain bin trades and then try and draft and develop. So, and if you got like a damn good farm system, use it for trade capital. Why not?
Right.
So, get a younger player that's going to last you a few years. So it doesn't have to be one of these rentals for like half a season or whatever it is.
Right.
So, there's so many different combinations of things you can do. It's just kind of idiotic that you just dig in your heels on draft and develop. To me, it reminds me of the Oakland Athletics from the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And, bargain finds.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Through analytics.
Yeah.
That's true. They do great regular seasons, maybe advance somewhere into the playoffs.
Yeah.
But never really go anywhere.
Right.
In the end,
right.
they always hit a wall every time.
Yep.
And it's always in the playoffs.
Yep.
But Moneyball helps if your team sucks. Otherwise, that would help. But it's not. That by itself is not enough.
No.
You don't have to be the Dodgers shelling out $700 million for one player.
Right.
And, even when I say sign somebody for free agency, it doesn't automatically people argue. It's like, well, there aren't those players available, or why should you spend $400 million on a player? I'm not saying you should.
Yeah.
Greg, like you were saying, it's, pieces to the puzzle to get you over the top. Really good, solid players to help you win.
Right.
Darrell Evans wasn't a top shelf free agent.
He wasn't.
And, but he was important. Willie Hernandez, that was catching lightning in a bottle that year.
Exactly.
So, but they made the trades for major leaguers
to
do this. And is it a risk? Like in the case of Willie and Dave Bergman, they came over from Philly, and they gave up a couple of fan favorites to get him.
Yes, they did. It's true.
So
I love John Walkenfuss, and I still do.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. Yes. Especially with that batting stance. Oh my God. Yeah.
Everybody. I hear that so much online. Everybody remembers his him up at the plate, but at the same time, if they didn't do that,
exactly. Yep.
We would still only be celebrating the last Tigers World Series from 1968.
Right.
Yeah, that's a terrifying thought. Yeah. But yeah, my biggest fear: just don't run this team like the Tampa Bay Rays. God, that
or the
as soon
A's,
as
or the A's.
Exactly. I mean, there's a happy medium. I'm not expecting the Tigers to be like the Dodgers or the Yankees or something like that, but they can't afford to run the team with a little looser than a team like the Rays or some of the Pirates, for an example, another bottom feeder. It's going to be fascinating to see what they do with Paul Skeens, for example, when the time comes, and they're still bad. So or for that, we're talking about spending money and $400 million players. We'll see what the Tigers do with Tarik Skubal next year, because he'll be in the last year of his contract. And that's going to be a fascinating decision as to what they do with that. Because if you ask me, just don't, be factual about what you're going to do. Because remember when the Tigers made that low ball offer to Max Scherzer that was obvious when he was not going to sign?
Right.
But that allowed the Tigers to say, we tried.
Right.
We made an offer. We tried to sign him, even though it was essentially a below market offer for a Cy Young winning pitcher. Right. So it was, if you're gonna either make up your mind, go for it, or just be honest, and say we're either gonna trade him or we're gonna ride that horse as far as we can, and we make the playoffs, and then let the cards fall they may in the offseason. But don't just play us for suckers by making a low ball bullshit offer. That's the one thing I don't want to see them do.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that what like Cleveland does? Basically, they'll bring people up, but then at some point it's like we're not going to pay them.
Yeah, Cleveland's another team that does the exact same thing. Exactly. That is true.
So,
all right. Well, let's talk about more ugly stuff before we wrap up this podcast, and let's go on. What happened?
Let's do Clue 2, the birthday game.
Oh, I forgot. The second. Okay, fire away.
I just realized my math was really off on Alex Caris. So.
Yeah,
he would have been like 10 years old when he started playing. So.
Yeah.
Well, he was really good.
He was big. He had a pituitary.
Yes, he was big boned. All right, fire away, Greg.
Sure. Well, I'm Hall of Famer, Lion through and through, born in this state in 1945. Hall of Fame in 1992. A dynamic player out of Jackson State.
Oh, Lombardi.
Lombardi. Yeah, Lombardi. Yeah. Lombardi. Yes, sir.
Yeah. How can I forget Lombardi is in the Hall of Fame, for fuck's sake? But
well, it took too long to get him there, but he got in.
Yeah.
He got in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, another guy who just think how celebrated he would be if he had played on a better franchise.
The first pass ever thrown in Lombardi's direction, opening day in Green Bay, Bart Starr, Lombardi got a pick six.
Yeah.
Talk about setting the stage for his career.
Yeah.
And Lem was Deion Sanders before Deion Sanders was even a glint in his mother's eye. Mm-hmm. Lem was a dynamic punt returner, good defensive back. He also punted, believe it or not. He was the Lions punter for a while. He did it all, and he's 80. God bless him, Lombardi.
Yeah.
Right on.
All right, with that, I will take my ding dongs. Please pack them carefully. And maybe with some dried ice so they don't spoil or get more stale than they already are. Okay.
Are you kidding? Those things have a half-life better than uranium. They'll outlive cockroaches.
Yes. All right. Well, compose myself here. The other big off-season news in Detroit since we've been off has been the Malik Beasley story. The Pistons quickly had to pivot in free agency. They signed Caris, LeVert, and Duncan Robinson after it was announced that Malik Beasley, who was reportedly offered a 3-year, $42 million deal by the Pistons, was under federal investigation for gambling issues. I guess there were some red flags that popped up when it came to Beasley's action, I think to do with prop bets. There have been conflicting reports since about Beasley's status with the feds. There has been say that he's not a target, but he's a is he a target? Is he a suspect? Is he there's something going on. Even though Shams, the ESPN insider, said he is no longer a suspect, apparently that's not quite true. He's still somehow involved because it says volumes that a record-setting three-point shooter still has not been signed by anybody. Beasley did say today, as a matter of fact, on Instagram that my decision is near. And the other factor is the NBA, we don't know what they're going to do. Will the NBA, even if the feds decide that he's free and clear, will the NBA decide to punish Beasley? So, guys, do you think the Pistons take a chance on Beasley, or do you think that ship has sailed? What do you think, Nick?
I don't see why they wouldn't take a chance on him. I don't know what the conditions are now.
Yeah, well, he would sign for a small contract. It'd probably be 1 year, which might make the risk worth it.
So, I mean, it could very well be, and I'm guessing it wouldn't have been whatever extension he would have gotten.
Oh God!
Don't they have
No.
that some sort of exemption thing that
Mid-level exemption or veterans exemption where you can sign like 1 year, $6 million, $8 million, something like that.
No, I thought that Langdon made a move where Langdon got back some sort of
a veteran. Yeah, I think it's worth like up to $14-16 million.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
right.
I mean, I don't know how else they could afford to pay Beasley, even for just 1 year.
Yeah.
So I just thought maybe if they had maybe that's one way they could do it money wise. I don't know.
But do you want to tie up that money in Beasley when you still don't know what his NBA status is going to be?
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't suggesting that they do. I was just thinking that the only way that they could make it happen, from a money standpoint, I think, is through that exemption. I think.
I mean, I think you're right to wonder why hasn't he been signed
Well, I think
already?
it's pretty obvious why he hasn't signed. It's this thing that's hanging over.
Yeah, but Shams says
Right.
he's no longer a suspect, so you would think he'd be free to sign, which means I think NBA teams knows more than the rest of us do.
That's my point, because when the news was first announced that he's free and clear, you thought that whatever signing would happen rapidly.
Right, and it hasn't.
It hasn't. It's been like a few weeks actually. Now.
Yeah, it's been, exactly.
And so there must be something out there.
Kind of late in the game. To be fair, though, a lot of teams have made the rosters are set. To be fair,
yeah,
I mean,
and that's possibly it. Even
a lot of this activity, all the roster activity happens in June and July, not so much in October, September.
Right.
Right, and the other thing too is the Pistons already went to contingency plans when Beasley, this mess was first announced. Yeah. So they picked up Duncan Robinson. They picked up LeVert.
They went to the Michigan connection.
Yep.
They picked up somebody else too. Who the heck else did they pick up? I'm drawing a blank. But so they picked up those guys already to address what they would be losing out of Beasley. And so will they add Beasley in addition to that? Probably not for the amount of money that he was originally assigned. So that's probably what's taking time. And to your point, Greg, where like the rosters are more or less set, it's like whatever money we have left now to sign this guy. Right. It might be much more of a complicated contract saying if you're really in trouble and all of a sudden, the shit hits the fan with the NBA because of whatever this gambling stuff is, there's probably lots of clauses in that contract.
I think you're thinking of Javonte Green.
That's exactly. I just looked it up. That's exactly who they picked up. Yeah.
Okay.
And then to the bench guy. So.
Yeah, right.
So who knows? It's
a messy situation all the way around, and the bad part is, if Beasley is ultimately found innocent, then the feds just fucked him over because he was on the verge of signing a massive deal. Mm-hmm. And even worse for Beasley is all this other stuff about his finances that have now been leaked out. About how he was evicted from his Detroit apartment, which apparently he has paid that money back and whatever. But there's been a lot of issues. There's been a lot of stuff thrown out there about Beasley's irresponsibility with his finances. Right. And a lot of, but a lot of that stuff would never have come out if this betting stuff came out. But again, when you factor it all together, people say, oh, he's under investigation for gambling allegations, and he's having trouble financially. Well, it makes sense. But
Yeah.
We don't know for sure. Maybe he's just awful with money. Who knows? But yeah, again, once again, I know you two especially have really pounded on this. Here we are again, another gambling scandal in sports. And we're going to hear it over and over and over again. And unfortunately, it's never going to go away because they are so intertwined at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
they're
scared
promoted by the league now. So
right,
Yeah.
I'm scared we're going to have another. What was that guy? Tim Donahue. What was that guy's name? That
Donahue, yeah, the NBA ref.
I'm scared that we're going to have another, not necessarily basketball. But I'm scared we're going to have another something like that going on with where an official, a game official.
Oh yeah, go back to the 50s with what CCNY, the point shaving scandals
right.
they had in the 50s. Yeah,
I mean, the players thing, yeah, for sure, is a concern. But I just feel like we're I don't want to find out there's some sort of hanky-panky going on with game officials. That's really good. I mean, it's one thing for players to be involved in that stuff, which is bad enough. But if we start getting stories of officials under investigation, that's going to be a real dark day.
Yeah.
Well, it's not only that. It's not only them being involved in the gambling part of it. It could be also there could be death threats to these guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if the refs aren't involved in the gambling, all of a sudden there's a death threat.
Oh God, yeah. Social media. If someone has a bad game, and then you see all these people online yelling at them because they cost them their bet or their prop bet or their parlay or something.
Sure.
Oh my God, it's awful.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, look at the Guardians. Emmanuel Clase, one of the best closers in baseball. It's like he's been disappeared.
Yeah.
You haven't heard a peep about that guy ever since he was put on the restricted list or whatever for his gambling allegations.
Yeah.
Because there was red flags that came up with prop bets. Again, it's always about the prop bets. But yeah, there's nothing stopping it at this point. There's nothing.
No. It'll keep popping up, and then the most ridiculous thing is that you can't watch a game without being them pushing
Yes.
with well, here's the line, and like the announcers are bringing this stuff up in addition to all this shit being sponsored by FanDuels.
Yeah.
And heck, I just go look up the score or the box score in a baseball game. I have all kinds of betting crap that I have to look at on Yahoo Sports.
That's right.
It's just everywhere. So, and it's not going away. There's way too much money.
No.
It ain't changing. So.
All right. Well, that was a very uplifting podcast. No, but no, the Tigers are going to be a playoff team. The Pistons should be a playoff team. The Wings are at the very least going to be a bubble team again. And the Lions, one game thrown out, there still should be a very good team. So this was just let's just call this podcast an outlier for once. Because I'm not sure when we're going to be able to record again. We'll talk about that. But I think before we start getting out of here, we need to have our jerk of the week. So, Nick, who is your jerk of the week or jerk of the past few weeks?
I'm going to go with a couple of adult sports fans in the stadiums.
Oh, yeah.
One was in the U.S. Open tennis tournament.
Yep.
And then the other one was, I think, this past weekend at a Phillies-Marlins game. And the one and it's the adults who are just really shitty to kids. I think the one in the tennis tournament was particularly awful because the tennis player went directly to a kid to give the kid a hat. And there's a guy next to the kid just took the hat right out of the player's hands or out of the kid's hands. But I think when it first happened, the guy doubled down and said, the kid's got to learn in life, you got to go after something if you want it. That's at least the reports I heard. Like, did he really say that? That just adds like fuel to the fire. And he was threatening to sue people if, they were slandering him afterwards. So that guy is just like a downright jerk. He's probably a jerk in the rest of his life too. Then the other one in Philly where some woman insisted on getting a ball that some guy ended up grabbing for his kid. She's been smeared all over social media. In her case, I don't like that as much, but she was wrong to be kind of like losing her shit over a ball. So
Yeah.
in my I don't remember what their names are, but it just happened like a couple times in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Got a lot of attention. So those are my jerks of the week.
Good call on that. Yeah, and good and for the kid with the Philadelphia woman. Good on the teams for making it right for that kid.
Both
he ended
teams,
up both exactly. So, Greg, who's your jerk of the week?
Well,
I think
as I alluded to earlier, the Lions-Packers broadcast, as you mentioned, was the lead game for CBS. So Jim Nantz and Tony Romo was the announcing team, and as we all know, Micah Parsons has made his debut as a Packer, and it was almost like the Lions. Now, it didn't help that the Lions were awful. That did not help. If the Lions had played better and it was a more competitive game, maybe they wouldn't have leaned on the Parsons narrative. But my God, they were beside themselves with excitement. Parsons is in the game. He's in the game. Oh, Parsons is lined up over center. Oh, Parsons is on the near side. Parsons is this. Parsons is that. And he didn't do really anything until the very end. He got a garbage time sack when he chased down the fleet-footed. I can't tell who's faster, Jared Goff or the sprinter Ben Johnson. I don't know who's faster, but somehow he was able to track down the fleet-footed Jared Goff and sack him. I don't know how he did it. Unbelievable job by Micah Parsons to track him down. I mean, I'm faster than Goff is. Let's face it. But the whole thing, it was the Micah Parsons show, and I understand it's a big story in the NFL. I get it, but it was really annoying that this guy, they were tracking his every movement. Is he on the sideline? Is he in the game? Where is he lined up at? There was one third and 16, and Jim Nantz gleefully said, "I think it's Parsons time," like he's a Packers guy. My God. Okay, he's good. I get it. He's a good player. But they just completely over. And I know, again, if the Lions had played better, I hope maybe it wouldn't have been that way. The Lions were so bad, to be fair to Nantz and Romo, the Lions were so bad that maybe the Parsons thing was maybe easier for them to sprinkle into the broadcast. But my goodness, that was unbelievable. That was really hard to listen to, this whole Parsons glazing. But that's the way it is. Announcers are never going to make everybody happy. I understand that, but it was just really obnoxious. I'm sorry.
It reminds me of all the Chris Collinsworth, Patrick Mahomes, whatever that is, that relationship.
Again, I'll bring up that word Greg used, gargling. Enough said. So, so let you know how he really felt. He's toning down the rhetoric right now. All right. I was wondering where I was going to go with my jerk of the week. I think the easy one would be what's going on with the Clippers and Steve Ballmer and Quali Leonard with the supposedly Pablo Torre doing a massive amount of investigative journalism, seemingly proving that Ballmer evaded the salary cap to give Leonard an extra $48 million. Right. And we'll see how the NBA reacts to all this. From what we're hearing, though, is that the other owners are not very happy about this. And if what happened with Minnesota like 15 years ago was any indication, they lost 5 draft picks for making some promises to Joe Smith about a future contract. You would hope the NBA just comes down with a massive hammer with the Clippers and sends them to the shadow realm for a decade. But I'm going to go with another one, though. This is a more lighthearted one, and that was the NFL on YouTube game this past week. They put it was the Chargers Chiefs game this
Friday
past
night
week.
Or something?
And they put it on YouTube, and it made me feel so old. Because a lot of the people they featured were YouTubers and influencers. I had no fucking idea who any of these people are. And this Mr. Beast guy, that man I find him terrifying. he just got this creepy smile, these dead eyes, and yet for some reason the NFL felt to feature this guy heavily in this broadcast. Even having Roger Goodell do a huge bit with him. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, I am not in the demographic they're trying to get with this game. I just wanted to watch some football. I don't want to see these YouTubers with weird names like Destroying. I don't care what they had to think about this game. And what do I care? Well, I really don't care about what any YouTubers think about the game for the most part. There are some talented ones out there that actually do good. That actually do really solid analysis. The guys are out there, but these weren't the guys we saw. We saw the types that do funny skits and things like that on this game, and it just made me feel so old and so out of it. And I'm sure the vast majority of people watching that game probably felt the same damn way, because most of these YouTubers I hope I never ever see again. Because the vast majority of them were so fucking annoying, So and that's the other thing. Yeah.
So wait a minute. I don't. Help me understand, because I didn't watch what you watched. So the game was on YouTube. You said.
Yes, it was on YouTube.
These people you're talking about, these influencers, what role did they have? Were they just like commenting?
Sideline commentary. They were very visible during the pregame and things like that. Some of them were also doing watch-alongs on their own channel at the same time.
Okay.
And Mr. Beast they had on the pregame, they had at halftime, and they had in the postgame because he had some sort of.
Beast. I have no idea who you're talking about.
Yeah, well, he is. How to describe Nick? Do you know who Mr. Beast is?
I've heard the name.
Heard of him? Yeah, I've never watched his videos, but
YouTube is essentially my patience a lot.
Yeah, have you ever the Hunger Games or Squid Game?
Oh, of course,
that's essentially the shit Mr. Beast does on YouTube. For the most part, he had his own series on Amazon, essentially ripping off Hunger Games and Squid Game, doing that kind of shit. Wow. And the guy's a billionaire at this point because he just know. But the thing is. But again, I'm not the demographic, because the people watching the guys like him are kids and tweens and teenagers, and I don't think they give a shit about the NFL. So the whole thing was just weird. I'll just put it that way. The game was good. Everything surrounding it was just weird. So that's my jerk of the week. Sometimes just don't panic. Just broadcast the damn game. Yeah. It's and the same goes on that end. I don't want to see Mr. Beast. On the other side, I don't want to see Terry Bradshaw either. So who apparently he called the Washington football team the Redskins during doing his halftime highlights this weekend. So there you go. All right, that's my okay. Those are my two jerk of the weeks then. Mr. Beast and Terry Bradshaw. Okay, with that, I think it's time to get the hell out of here, because we are running well over and we got stuff to do. So, Greg, if you get out the thank yous and the social media and all that kind of fun stuff, please do.
Okay, first of all, please subscribe to my Substack, gregeno.substack.com. It's free, and I will be in your inbox every Monday. Follow me on X at Greg Eno. You can also follow the Knee Jerks on X, although we're not very active on X, quite frankly, at the Knee Jerks. Check me out. Today's column was about the Lions Super Bowl or bust.
It's a very good one, as always.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I want to also thank my lovely wife Sharon for putting up with this nonsense. Starting up again. She had a 4-month hiatus. Now she's back to putting up with this stuff for me every 2 weeks. Thank you guys, of course, for making Monday night so gosh darn fun.
And Nick, I gotta let everybody know where they can find you online.
Right on. I am on Twitter at Nick Milanovich, and on Blue Sky. I usually don't talk sports on Blue Sky, but I'm there under my handle Cat Up a Tree, so that's where you can find me.
And for everybody, Nick is a very talented wood carver. You should see some of the stuff he's doing.
Very.
Yeah, he's spending his time in a far more productive way than just watching sports. We'll put it that way.
I didn't watch sports. It was only baseball.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Sport on there. And,
Yeah.
so that's Instagram, and it's Cat Up a Tree on Instagram. So
Yes.
you can find me there too.
Yeah, Nick's our resident Renaissance man. And as always, we appreciate you listening to the show and watching for that matter, because we do live stream the show. But to listen to the show, we would love you to subscribe. We are available on all the usual podcast places, such as Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube Music, iHeartRadio. We're on Spotify. We're on Amazon Music. We're on Deezer, Radio Public, Ghana. Essentially, just do a search for the Knee Jerks podcast on your podcast host that you prefer to use. We should be there, and please download and listen to the show. Please like, share, subscribe, as they say. We also live stream the video of the show to YouTube and to Twitch. YouTube is archived. Twitch only stays up for about 2 or 3 weeks. That's just the nature of the beast. And also, our homepage is thekneejerks.net, where you can find all the links to things we talked about, all the social media links. Everything we talk about is going to be listed on thekneejerks.net, where you can also just download the podcast straight from there via an MP3. Okay, I think with that, we're about ready to get out of here, but I will say I'm not sure when we're going to be able to do the next show. I'm headed to Florida in like a day and a half. Then I'm going back up north where I have horrible internet, so I don't know what we're going to be doing just yet when it comes to scheduling the next show. So we'll just follow Greg and Nick online, and they will let you know when the next podcast is going live. Hopefully in the next month. Hopefully in a couple weeks. We'll wait and see. But I guess until then, we'll get that figured out. But until that time, next time we talk, please join us. And time to say goodnight. So this is LB saying good evening, good luck, and aloha, along with Nick Milanovich.
Good night, everybody.
And, of course, Greg Eno.
Ciao, Italy. We'll see you whenever.
Yeah.